2 years ago, I found this 42-foot catamaran abandoned in an anchorage in the Netherlands. Strangely though, it had been left with only a couple of screws holding the windows in, which had led to loads of water getting in, and there was loads of other spots where the water could just get in and essentially in a very shallow anchorage sink the boat. So the last 2 years have just been an endless battle with all this rot, but also because the boat was just a shell, I've had to build so much to get it to a sort of basic functional sailing condition. So I've had to build decks, a full Dyneema rig, mast bases, retracting engine pods, and so much more. So far I've only really been focusing on functional aspects of the project just to get out sailing and cruising, which I managed to do last year with some nice sailing around the Netherlands, but now I want to take the boat to warmer weather, which is gonna mean a lot of sailing in harsher conditions, and to do that I'm gonna need some crew, and right now the crew quarters are an absolute mess, especially because of that water ingress. So while the days are short and cold, this is what I'm going to be working on. Thanks so much for watching. Nice to see the old crew back together. A lot of people are telling me don't leave any gaps, because obviously where there's air gaps there's going to be condensation, so it's really annoying, this very tiny gap here. The previous owner cut out all these panels and he's obviously just cut out, removed the foam. Bit of a pain. It's funny because we like to blame a lot of our boat's problems on the previous owner, but we are probably also the previous owner to a lot of people, so everyone has their own little ways of doing things and they're very rarely the same as everyone else. So I dread to think what the next owner of this boat, if there is going to be one, would think about my work. So I got a chase from a swan. This swan really went to great lengths to follow me and intimidate me, but I made it to the boat shop with my life. I really need some mixing containers for the epoxy. I'm going to be filling all the parts which I've got the foam cut out for, and always with these epoxy jobs it takes way more than you expect. So I got some micro balloons, a whole kilogram. It was €30. If I was using these West System ones it would be ridiculously expensive, and there's going to be so much epoxy and filler going up there. It's always surprising how much you use. But also my outboard engine, it's a 2-stroke, but it smokes, especially after running it fast. Smokes quite a lot, and last week I changed the impeller and I found salt deposits in the lower leg, and so I presume there's going to be salt deposits in the engine block as well. So I also got descaling engine flush, but that should sort it out. So I'm not going to go out on my dinghy again until I've flushed that, so I'm going to have to do that at some point. Loads and loads and loads and loads of gluing to be done. Lots of filling. Got my little heater so I'll keep it nice and warm, and it should be alright. Just preparing myself to go into the zone. This pump has broken. These good old, not very trusty pumps. So this resin, it's gone solid in parts and it's got sucked up into the pump, and it's impossible to pump now. You can weigh it out, so it's 5 to 1. This is actually going to be way faster weighing it out than using these pumps. It just takes ages pumping every time. That's, so if I do 50 grams of this, then it should be 10 grams of this. 5 grams and 1 gram. 50 grams, 10 grams. 100 grams, 20 grams. 200 grams, 40 grams. I think these micro balloons are a very fine powder because it took a lot to get to this much thicker consistency, so it doesn't just drip down. I hope anyway. I could probably maybe put another spoonful in, but that's a nice big tub of filler for about 360 grams of epoxy. That did not go very well at all. Even though my bucket of epoxy with mixer was full, it's just to do the initial bit, there wasn't really enough. I'm not sure if I put enough in to really fill all the holes. I hope, I don't know. And I mixed up an even bigger pot, and that wasn't, well, it was maybe just about enough, I don't know, to sort of get it stuck on, but yeah, just a nightmare. I think these micro balloons are more for furring rather than adhesion. Not bad for filling, but you really have to mix in loads and loads, and it's very sloppy. It's difficult to get that peanut butter texture so that it's not dripping down. With the second batch, I really tried to mix in a load of it to make it thicker, but it's still dripping down. But I'm not doing any more today. Forget that. Epoxy everywhere. When I look back at times where I've done this before, I look back at it and think, oh, that wasn't too bad, I'll just do it again. But then when I'm doing the job, I'm like, oh, I remember this is a painful job to do. Probably looks fairly simple procedure on camera, but in reality, it's a pain. So the epoxy has set very nicely. I do love cracking off the old epoxy from the mixing pots, and that's why I got this sort of heavier duty pot, because you can reuse them, because there's nothing worse than every time having to pay, I don't know, 80 cents for a mixing pot. So hopefully I can get a good few uses out of this one before it cracks. But yeah, the epoxy's set, all good. Now that it's set, it feels a lot more solid. I do think there's some smaller gaps in there, but because everything is just souped in epoxy, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Anyway, another session today, finishing off those other panels. I've been thinking about how I'm going to do it, so I'm going to slop the epoxy on the panel and then stick it up rather than try and paste it up, so it's less messy. I'm going to give it another go. I didn't even film it. It went in so well. Finally, it's all glued in, and when I was finishing up yesterday, obviously I've just gone in with filler into the corners and tried to fill everything. I was not very happy with my job yesterday. Again, once it's all set and dried, it feels good again. It feels good. I'm just hoping where the panels are glued in, around the sides of them, that it doesn't crack. I really hope this epoxy and micro balloons mixture is gonna stick well, and I don't have any cracks coming through. It's just gonna look ugly. I am obviously gonna take the screws out that I've put in, and I just hope it stays in place. But overall, I'm mildly happy with it, I would say. Now my thinking is that I've done all the gluing, and now it's the sanding phase. So I'm going to take all this bedding, this mattress out. Hopefully I can store it in my bathroom, my very swanky bathroom, and then I can sand all this, because the paint in here is horrible. It's chipping off. Obviously there was water in all of these side cabinet things, whatever you call them. The paintwork has suffered, and I want to revamp this whole hull. So I'll start with sanding this bedroom from the bow, moving backwards to this panel work. There's going to be another stage of filling stuff again. The stairs are broken, they need sorting out. But I'm going to take this bedding out, start sanding in here, sand as much as I can, get all these panels and everything all nicely shaped. 120. I've got two types of paint, so I think the first one is an epoxy paint and then this one is probably a single component. The idea is, well, what I've been taught is that once you've scraped away the paint flakes at a microscopic level, you have a very steep cliff. That's the top layer of the paint, that's the epoxy paint, and you want to sand it to get rid of that edge. Make sure this is properly stuck. I've got a wire brush, it's helping me to chip off the paint. I will still have to sand it. Pretty much sanded down, planed down the panels that I've put in, so everything's pretty much flush, but I have a lot of screw holes, a lot of dings and stuff that I need to fill with epoxy. I'll use the fairing compound for that, but also I have the steps here which are cracked, and on the very bottom sort of platform of the steps it's a little bit rotten in one place, so I'm going to fill all that. So rather than continue sanding, getting everything nice and flat and sanded, I'm gonna break out the epoxy again so I can we fix these things. The stairs, if I get all this all nice, then once I get the epoxy out again, it's just going to be an absolute mess, like it always is. So I'm going back to doing epoxy repairs, back to sanding, and eventually I'll get to paint this place. It's actually back-breaking work. It's so difficult holding up the sander. You can see why people love Merca, these very, very low profile, very light and easy to use sanders, because this with the big battery and then also holding the vacuum cleaner as well makes it very difficult. This episode so far has been really tough on my cameras, just getting dust absolutely everywhere. You can see dust forming inside the lens. When I was doing this, it just started steaming up, I think because my camera had been in the cold. This fast setting epoxy is really good, it sets no problem. I only had the heater on in here for a little while because I was absolutely freezing my balls off in my other hole, so I turned that off so I could have it on in there, and it's still set. And basically now I have an absolute crap load of sanding to do in here, and I'm starting to realise that I'm not going to get it done by the end of this episode. It's taking longer than I thought it would. So what I'm going to try and do is get my engine flushed out. It's probably going to be quite tricky getting the engine up onto the deck and getting everything set up, but I'm going to try anyway. All the really annoying jobs in this hull are done. It's just a load of sanding, some priming the wood, and then painting, finally. It's an absolute mess in here, it's bloody horrible. I can't be bothered, I don't want to be in here creating dust with my cameras, so... engine flush. Check out this proper fancy lock. It looks like this is going to be a bit more difficult than I first thought. Firstly, having a good stand for it. I drilled a hole through a piece of wood. That's the main halyard holding it up pretty much. The old workmate, it's not really strong enough for it. Also, the main thing is I've managed to squeeze a bucket underneath it, but it's not coming up to the water intake. So the idea is obviously you fill the container with water and then it gets sucked through the water intake and then out through the head and out the bottom. I'm gonna have to find a bigger container, maybe ask around the boatyard. Someone will have a proper stand or a container as well. It's difficult to get big items when I don't have a car. This is my car engine and it's hanging by a halyard. Mission failed. once I've cleared and sorted out all this hull, I've got this space. I've got stuff stored in here, but very, very unorganized. Loads of little compartments. Hopefully I can bring all my tools, which are in the compartment behind that, into here, clear out that space so that I can have potentially one crew member in there. It might be a bit dark and dingy, but we'll see, we'll see. Hopefully I can get all my tools into this space, and then we have a nice living space here, and hopefully by the end of the next video that will be done. In terms of getting crew, I am sort of just starting to think about having crew on board, so if you are interested in applying to crew the boat with me in summer, so from June through to autumn, hopefully getting down to Spain, not 100% sure on how I'm actually going to get crew on board. It is important for me to get the right people, chilled out people who are happy to take orders or to be on the same page as me in terms of decision making. But I think the main thing is also being flexible, being able to get to the boat, and when you want to leave the boat, you're flexible in that way. So I don't really like sailing to a time pressure, because that just causes difficult situations. So yeah, I'm still not 100% sure on how I'm going to do it, but if you are interested and you are flexible and you're a chilled out cat, then send an email to thewildlingsofficial@gmail.com. Just putting a few feelers out there for now. But yeah, there we go. So I was a little bit delusional in thinking that I could get this whole thing done in 2 weeks, but I think it's going to take another 2 weeks and we'll be pretty much there. I've done all the filling, I've done all the epoxy work. I just need to really sand everything down. Don't really like sanding with the cameras in the room. I'm getting all sorts of dust inside my lens and inside my camera. It's a tricky, it's an annoying job, let's put it that way, but once it's all painted and everything, it's going to be nice. I can maybe put a few decorative touches in. That's all for this week, and now I'm going to edit this video. A huge thanks to everyone who's subscribed from the last video. I've had a few new patrons. I've had a lot of very, very generous donations through PayPal, coffee, through the super chat in these comments. All the names of you guys showing up on the screen. Thank you so much. You're enabling me to do this, so thank you so much. Just by watching, just by liking, subscribing and following on with my progress, I appreciate that all so much, so thank you so much. And yeah, next week hopefully this is going to be like a new boat. I'll see you in that next video. Bye bye.